Okay, so what we're going to be covering today is investing in your retention strategy on the basis that we see recruitment as being so very last year, and retention is so much more important. So I just want to double check. Can you just let me know, Haydn, you can see the screen?
Yeah, I can see the screen.
Great, lovely. And just to say, if anybody does have any questions, like when when the screen's up, I can't always see everybody in the gallery. So just to let you know that in case you have got a question, by all means, just put your hand up. So you've already seen Haydn now on screen. Haydn is the director at Kin & Ilk. I'm sure lots of you, particularly if you're Cardiff or South Wales based, will have come across Kin & Ilk. And what we're going to do is I'm going to run through for you, first of all, some kind of principles around retention, kind of set the scene, hopefully give you some tools to take away. And then I'm going to invite Haydn to come in and talk about their experience at Kin & Ilk and some of the fantastic things that Haydn's been doing. And I've met with Haydn previously, so I know so you're going to get some really good insights there. So just kind of briefly run through what the session is. I'm going to do setting the scene, going to do some retention ideas, learning from the success, so say Haydn, opportunity to ask questions, any suggestions from anybody else, of anything else that we haven't already come up with. And then I'll do some signposting for you then. You can have, when you can get a copy of the presentation, you can then click on those links and you can then have a look at some more information in your own time. So I'm not going to do introductions, partly because I did do introductions yesterday and we did end up running over quite a bit on time yesterday. So I'm just going to kind of focus on setting the scene. So I think just double check you can still see the presentation, Haydn. Yeah, brilliant, thank you. So as we're all too painfully aware, really, over the last few years, there's been lots of different elements impacting on recruitment generally, and just in terms of turnover, staffing turnover, and working across various sectors as I do, I would say that kind of the food and drink producers, hospitality, etc., faring actually often worse than in some other sectors. And there are also other sectors not doing quite so well, but it's great to have Haydn here, because I think actually the approach that the Kin & Ilk have taken have kind of turned that on its head a bit. So really interested to hear what Haydn's going to share with us around that. So I think it's even more important as organisations to review your practice about what you do to offer, what you offer to individuals that you want to attract, and hopefully that you're not just focusing on that attraction, you're also thinking about how you can actually encourage people to stay with you. We've seen lots of salary increases as an example in recent years. Delivery drivers spring to mind. We've seen big problems with getting delivery drivers, particularly with Brexit, and actually lots of salary increases. But what salary increases often do is they only really provide a short-term fix. Doesn't necessarily mean individuals who you then spend lots of money and time recruiting are going to stay with you longer, because actually often when people jump ship for money, they'll jump ship next time somebody else puts the salary up as well. So what you really want to be focusing on is more kind of instilling loyalty to your company, thinking about, what you really need to be thinking about is where do you invest in making sure that you can retain those people that you really want to keep. And that's not to say that an element of turnover isn't healthy, because it absolutely is. But obviously you don't want to be constantly spending time on recruitment. And you really need to be thinking about that, making a fundamental shift from having a kind of a recruitment mindset to a retention mindset, so that you can invest in what really matters. And if you're going to get successful at this, you might even want to get to the point where you can engage people at entry level and train them to take on more senior roles in the company, or even utilise people at entry level to think about growing your company over time in a slightly less risky way, so that hopefully, again, you haven't got higher levels of turnover. And we'll talk about some of those things in more detail. So here's some considerations for you thinking initially. one of the things I've seen grow significantly, I would say definitely post lots of COVID lockdowns, and lots of restrictions, is people having a real opportunity to reflect and thinking they want a better work-life balance. So with that in mind, and that's all very individual to individual circumstances, I would say definitely think about how much flexibility you can offer, whether that's job sharing, whether that's you can be as flexible as possible with working hours, whether you can be flexible in terms of the days that people actually do the job. And sometimes there will absolutely be restrictions around that. But other times you can afford to be a bit more flexible with that. And if you can offer maximum flexibility or lots of flexibility, make sure you do highlight that as part of your advertising, something that's going to attract people. And actually, it's something that obviously is going to retain them as well. So I don't know, Haydn, whether whether that's something that you offer as a business. Is you able? Because I recognise, being a group of cafe shops that you're, or I'm not quite sure how you describe. Sorry, the whether it's cafes. Whether you're able to offer a degree of flexibility in the roles.
Yeah, so it's actually something that we've been focused on and kind of looking at. Obviously, given we're in hospitality and there's definitely that presenteeism, it's something that I know that we're competing against kind of other sectors in to kind of retain people in that regard. So we've very much taken an approach where we sell ourselves first of all on our trading hours. So we're very lucky in some of our office sites. So you're not working those evenings and you're not kind of working late nights or long hours. So that's 100% one thing that we kind of focus on in our job ads. But likewise, we also try and offer flexibility for people with children and things like that, where although we do have rigid shifts, we kind of give, especially if it's a manager where they've got families and things like that, which often happens with the more senior roles in hospitality, we give them the option to kind of flex in and out and kind of make up their hours elsewhere. If they do some more hours one week, they can drop off their hours in the next week. And I think also kind of on the flexibility, kind of coming back to contracted hours and things like that in hospitality, it's really vital to not expect people to constantly over work week on week without fail, because that often happens. So give them that flexibility where if they help you out one week and do those extra 5 hours that you need them to do to keep the business running, let them take those 5 hours and do the next week, so they're not feeling like they're being taken advantage of or anything like that. So I think flexibility is key, and I know it's something that my friends who work in kind of more traditional office-based jobs really value, even more so. And
Yeah,
likewise, they were working roles in London out of Cardiff now, so that's kind of interesting in itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've seen lots and lots of that kind of shift, haven't we, over the last couple of years, definitely. And I think you're right. It is, you're right. Again, as you say, often in hospitality, you will, particularly when you've got seasonal or busier periods. Yeah, there is that. You always got the same people often, haven't you, who are volunteering to do the extra shifts, and you end up then burning out almost. So that's great that actually what you try to do is encourage people to take that time back later on, rather than just then work a normal shift the following week. Yeah, that's brilliant. Again, because I think that's one of the things that really kind of helps people to feel valued at the end of the day, is that you recognize where they give that extra contribution, and you try and give that back in some other way later on. So really, really positive. Okay, and then benefits. It's another area, and we've seen lots of companies actually coming up with different types of benefits packages. And I think, again, one thing that I see lots of organisations don't do, but they could do much better from a recruitment and retention perspective, is very much put front and centre some of the benefits that they offer from working for the company. I know, Haydn, it's something you guys actually do really well, isn't it? You're really clear about some of the benefits of working with you as a company. And again, I think that really celebrating these and promoting them, not just at that point of recruitment, but also reminding people about some of those benefits frequently, so they get that added value that they're getting on top of the salary. They're reminded about that, and that really helps, especially if they are, hopefully people are, scanning, looking to see what else is out there, because I think that's a healthy thing to do. to actually remind them that they wouldn't necessarily get some of those benefits if they were to go somewhere else. And I think we'll cover that a little bit more when we look at motivation and kind of rewards a little bit, because that stuff tends to go hand in hand. But what this infographic that we've got on here tells us, and this is from a survey by Caboodle, as you can see, that actually different generations also prioritise different benefits. So again, thinking about how can you tailor your benefits packages so that individuals can either choose from a range of benefits. And again, we've seen a lot more of this over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, I would say, but actually focusing and it on, you know, some people holidays are more important, some people a bit more money is more important. As you can see, for some people, private healthcare is more important. It's understandable why some of that would be generational. And some of that actually is also down just to individuals' lifestyle choices. So I don't know, again, Haydn, is there something that you do looking at benefits in a flexible way?
I mean, 100%. I think the one thing also that we've kind of found with it is, especially speaking to our teams, we kind of looked into this area in loads of depth. And initially we were looking at the kind of the discount opportunities. But I mean, often those sort of kind of discounts, things like that, are available through almost every single subscription you have these days. So you look at like your Visa card and you get it, or your Vodafone bill and you get some, and the same discounts everywhere. So we kind of felt that those didn't add much, those parts didn't add much value. It was more the private healthcare and the mobile phones and things like that that really added value to the teams. And when you provide a phone, you know, it's going to cost the business net like, you know, 30, 40 pounds a month. You think of the value that's going to add to offering, you know, an employee some exciting new technology, as opposed to giving them that pay rise. And sometimes it's actually, there's more added value in a benefit than a pay rise. And likewise, private healthcare, you know, that pays back not just through the value the employee gets, but also through having healthy, you know, fit employees that are back to work sooner. So it's I think that's a really key one, because, you know, you're not just showing that you care, because, you know, ultimately we all care about our employees, are the life and soul of a business, but also it's adding that value. And I think, given, you know, the current kind of context of healthcare in the UK, it's really seen as a huge positive. So yeah, it's very much also, I think, and this I think illustrates really well what we're seeing as well in terms of popularity. You know, people, it's not all benefits are equally valued, so it's important to choose right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is what comes down to really knowing your staff, doesn't it? And knowing them as individuals rather than just a group of people who all perform the same function within the company, because it's understanding what's going to motivate one over another, what's going to, again, you're going to more likely to retain individuals than others. I think the healthcare one is a really fantastic one to be able to give, because actually they're not that expensive as people think that they might be. As you said, when you compare to a pay rise and the benefits that you get from that X pounds per month per employee versus what that would, the equivalent would be in a pay rise, which, and by the time it's been taxed, and would be quite negligible. Actually, some of the benefits of some of the healthcare stuff is not just, you know, prioritizing for consultants appointments, which we know, again, post-COVID, there's a big sort of backlogs, isn't there, with the NHS. So yeah, really, really useful. And also from a wellbeing perspective, you know, being able to access counselling or support online, as you said, really kind of tackling problems at an early stage, which then means that you're more likely to know about them earlier, and people have got support really quickly, because again, a lot of those services just aren't available at the moment for free. So and they're quite expensive for individuals to buy on an hourly rate basis. So yeah, just I can really see, again, people recognizing the value that they have as employees being given a benefit like that, particularly something that's not traditionally seen in hospitality, is it? You wouldn't necessarily think, you know, of that kind of benefit. So
no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's often people in like, I think the traditional viewpoint of hospitality is, you know, get people in, work them as long hours as possible for as little as possible. And I think offering these kind of more values that you see in more not traditional, I guess more exciting new industries like technology and these sort of things, is a real selling point to keep people in an industry that's losing people. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm honestly just so impressed. Okay, and let's have a look then at some more ideas for retention. So obviously we kind of cover some of these. I mean, when we're looking at thinking about job description, I know we're thinking about this from a recruitment perspective, but actually sometimes kind of just people understanding the role that they've got. It can be really long-winded, it can feel quite cumbersome. And actually what I would say is not necessarily just for recruitment, but just that sort of understanding of what a job is. Make it as short and as punchy and to a degree as flexible. And I would even say as quirky as possible. I think that's something, again, I'm really seeing is people looking for something different. People have had this period of time where they've reflected on what they want to do in life, certainly over lockdown. And people are looking for something that stands out and something that's a bit more different. Don't just list, again, a long, endless list of essential criteria. Make sure that might only be 3 or 4 things that you absolutely need, or it would be great if you had X, Y, and Z. It's much more likely to result in you being able to recruit individuals with absolute potential and train them up into the role, something that you could potentially train them to do in a few weeks. Does it really need to be essential criteria in the job that you're offering? It might cost you a little bit more in the short term to do that extra bit of training, but actually in the longer term, they're going to be much more loyal to you because you've trained them in that role, you've given them those skills. And with this other stuff that we're talking about, the value added stuff that sits around all of that as well, they're going to be much more likely to stay with you then for longer. And if you think about it, I mean, how many times have you recruited somebody who just had a really great interview technique? I've been there many times as a HR practitioner over somebody who you could really see the potential, but actually when you were looking at the JD, they just kept coming out scoring that bit higher because they're just able to tick all the boxes in an interview. It's such a short window that actually potential is potentially really important. And if you combine this then with kind of stage training and development, so thinking about promotion opportunities, they're going to stay with you even longer. And a bit like you were saying, Haydn, you might think about people who come in with a lower skill set, but if they can see the potential to go to a manager's role and the flexibility potential that comes with that, the other added values stuff that potentially comes with those roles, they're much more likely to stay with you for longer. And I'm going to share with you at the end some links around kind of thinking about looking at government subsidised schemes that can possibly help again to grow the business and while you train people up. And also if you're thinking actually somebody with support, somebody with potential, but they could do with some training, you could possibly look at like a Jobs Growth Wales or an apprenticeship, or even React, somebody who's currently redundant or at risk of redundancy, because they're potentially subsidised. So it could be a great way of growing the business and also bringing somebody on board with potential. This sort of minimises that risk to the business a little bit more as well. So kind of combine all of these elements together with your excellent retention strategy and you've got a recipe for success. So again, Haydn, I guess thinking about, when you're looking at your pool of people who've applied, how much are you thinking about people with potential and looking at that training and support element when you're recruiting?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, often it's very different for different sectors again, but often, especially coming back to where we work, the harder skills to get are the skills you can't teach. So when you notice those small I guess skills and that they have, and you can kind of see it straight away generally during an interview, and you kind of jump on that and then work on their other areas. I think for sure the more you can kind of spend time with people being open and honest about their performance as well, that's a really great thing for retention. So, if someone's doing something wrong, if you don't tell them they're doing it wrong, they probably won't last very long because you'll be frustrated with them. They might not understand that they're doing it wrong, and you're kind of going in circles. But if you're honest with people and you tell them, this is your opportunity, I think people take it really well. So, it's about being transparent with people and giving them that opportunity to kind of move forward in the organization. And develop is, I think, what keeps people. And at the end of the day, if people aren't kind of driven by that opportunity to move forward, then perhaps they're not the best person for the organization as well, because that's what you want. You want ambitious people who want to like kind of improve systems, improve opportunities for the company, improve opportunities for themselves, because they all align in that regard. So yeah, 100%. I think the more you can kind of do that, the better. I mean, something that we find very useful is putting a lot of kind of our values and ideas up front in the job description. So, and we recently, in fact, did our equality and diversity policy, as well as our sustainability policy, actually, with Lesley. And we're very much upfront with those in our job ad, because if people can't share our like kind of views and ideas as a business in those regards, then obviously they might not get on very well with us. But likewise, it usually, if you are upfront and open about your values and they're strong and transparent, then people that do share those values will stick around for a lot longer. We've even retained people based on coming out with sponsoring new events, in the community, because people are so driven by kind of altruism and doing exciting things for other people, not just themselves. So I think a value-driven kind of retention approach is also hugely important, especially amongst, I think, the younger sort of 18 to 30 kind of age group, where they almost won't work for a company if they don't believe they're sustainable, because that's almost a bare minimum for a lot of people these days. So yeah, I guess values to add to that as well is a big one.
Oh, I completely agree with you. That's absolutely right. Yeah. And that is, that is part of the potential, isn't it, that you see, as you say, the potential to align with your values, because that could be so much more important than, again, having that skill set that you could probably teach in a few weeks for some aspects. And actually, you can cover that as part of your induction process as well, can't you? It sounds to me like that's what you're doing. You're spending that time introducing people to other people in the company, kind of thinking about trying to make them feel welcome as though they belong as part of the business. And I think the more time that managers invest in this, again, the quicker people will feel connected. They'll feel like they belong. Hopefully, they will align themselves with your values, or hopefully their values will already align with your values. But sometimes there's work to do to kind of align those. And like we said, it's a bit of a balance between individualizing this as much as possible, and kind of getting to know the person and what motivates them, and trying to make that almost bespoke, like we said, kind of bespoke benefits, bespoke flexibility, and also try to make sure that you're being consistent and fair as well. So there can absolutely be a balance in terms of what you do with this stuff. Another suggestion is thinking about having a buddy or a mentor, particularly if you've got somebody who's really strong on your values and really strong on brand, really, again, is well respected within the company. They can be there to deal with any early questions that individuals might have, and to be a main point of contact. And again, hopefully they'll start to feel as connected as soon as possible. Because I think what we often see is people start a job, they don't quite connect. Something's quite missing, either because the business is just too busy, they just haven't quite had the time to get them to really understand what's required for them, or they just don't quite see where they fit in, and really trying to invest in that. And if you've got one person who's always doing the induction, sometimes they can be spread a bit too thinly. But having buddies and mentors to support that means there's always somebody available. It just kind of shares that out a little bit more as well. I don't know if you do anything like that, Haydn.
Yeah, so I mean, it's on a site-by-site basis. Each general manager kind of takes the lead with their new employees, which is great. I mean, the way to also look at it is by handing down responsibility. You're giving people opportunities to kind of develop themselves. So you're not just retaining that person that's just come in. You're also retaining the manager, because they're suddenly seeing their development through developing other people. So I think it's really important that that even if you have a great HR department or person, that they're teaching and working with the managers as much as possible to kind of hand over their skills, because it's not about having a skill and keeping it to yourself. It's about having a skill and getting as many people to get that skill in your company as possible. So yeah, 100%.
Absolutely, exactly right. And as you say, that's where, again, people can see that potential for growth, can't they? And thinking about that from a job variety perspective, actually having those increased skills, being exposed to different parts of the business, or different even different roles that you might not have actually come into the business to have that job, or ever have that desire to take that career path. just being exposed to different bits of business can actually, again, make people much more likely to want to stay with you. They're less likely to become bored in the job, because sometimes you almost end up with like a bespoke role itself, or a somebody's just demonstrates a particular skill set that you think, great, actually, they might do some podcasts for us, or they might do, just something different that they haven't been brought in to do. And again, it's got the benefit, as you said, Haydn, of being able to utilize them in a lot more different ways across the business, as well as keeping them engaged and hopefully being able to see where they could develop themselves in terms of their own career path. And then just thinking, then again, you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about, as you say this, and I know you guys do this really well already, this demonstrating passion for your brand. Like exactly as you said, individuals, I see this grown massively in the last few years. People want to align themselves with the values of different businesses. They look and they see, what's your online presence, what are you doing as a business, a bit like you said about sponsoring or putting on events. These are things that people will see. Oh, this is who you're aligning yourself with, this is what you stand for. I want to be part of that. And they almost potentially come to you because they can see when you're doing stuff in the community. People will say, oh, this is a company that I want to work for. So when you have got a job available and you're advertising it, you're much more likely to get people apply. And again, then when they're with you, they can really see that you're demonstrating this passion for your brand. You're passionate about your product, you're passionate about your clients, and you're passionate about your staff. People can afford to be choosy about who they work for these days. That we are in that place. It used to be the case that there was a lot less jobs, a lot more people. We're not in that place anymore. People can be choosy. They can move if they want to, and they will seek to align themselves with employers who do this stuff really well. And you can't just say, actually, I'm just going to put up some nice posters or do some advertising and say this is what we stand for. You've got to live this stuff as a company. You've got to demonstrate it in all that you do. If this is your vision, this is your mission, you've got a particularly senior staff, but everybody in the company needs to be living and breathing this stuff, and it needs to be obvious to somebody, even coming in as a client for the first time, as to what you stand for as a company. So it can be a lot of pressure, but it also it's such a valuable retention tool, not just obviously from an employee basis, but from a client basis as well. And again, it's one of those things that people, by doing this, staff will then much less likely to leave you, because they know they might not be lucky enough to work for somebody else who cares as much about their products, their staff, and their clients as you do as a business. And again, as you said, Haydn, you've already kind of alluded to this really, but having the culture of guidance and support for staff throughout their career, again, their individuals are going to quite quickly notice this. It's going to help them to settle in and feel secure in their role. Having that kind of then sewn into the very fabric of your company is going to be about what helps them to stay with you. And if you train your managers, particularly with kind of coaching skills and able to empower staff, they're going to be much more in a better position to be able to provide guidance and support on the spot, and to be doing this stuff generally, just in general conversations. They're going to be coaching people to come up with solutions for themselves, and that in itself can be very much more empowering. And again, that's something that then becomes embedded in the culture, becomes demonstrated in everyday interactions, and it means that people are much more likely to retain those staff. So I don't know whether, is that anything, I don't know whether you do coaching specifically, or what sort of management training you might do in your company, Haydn?
Yeah, so it's very hands-on, so kind of working with them directly, whether it's on shift, big events. I kind of have the ethos as well, where I wouldn't ask anyone in the team to do anything that I wouldn't do as well. So, you can catch me on the pot wash at Kinnerilk. Sometimes I might be in the kitchen. In fact, I was in the kitchen on the hottest day of the year recently, because you know, if I can't ask the guys to do it, then you know, if I can't do it myself, I shouldn't be asking them to do it, you know, for us. So it's really important that you kind of have that transparent, open approach where you take hands-on kind of you know, I guess coaching really seriously. I think also having like an open kind of policy where, you know, anyone in the business, it's not about just going to your GM, but also feeling comfortable to go to anyone, whether they're a director or an owner. It doesn't really matter where you sit, and having like open conversations. I often think that kind of things sometimes get lost in translation. So it could be that you bring in a new policy or a new product or something like that, and if everyone in the business doesn't understand exactly the like kind of the thinking behind it, they might kind of misinterpret the aim of it as well. So if people feel like they can come and ask you, then any sort of small confusions or doubts about ideas often get cleared up far sooner, and that'll also often then prevent that person becoming disenfranchised, or, you know, perhaps not aligning themselves with your products or brand anymore, and then ends up leaving. So it's very much having that, you know, we're often small businesses, and it's hard to have amazing policies and procedures where everyone always gets all the information in the best possible way. But I think having a mentality and an approach where, you know, it's very transparent, open, and people can question anything is a really good way of kind of solving that for businesses with lack of resource. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing as well. And likewise, as well as rewarding people, but also making sure you're holding people to account. You know, there's nothing really worse than a high performing team with one bad egg in it, because often that spreads pretty quickly. So if a situation isn't working well, or an employee isn't working well, you know, the good employees will suffer if you don't approach that and kind of get onto that quickly. So we found that, yeah, you can have one bad person in the team, and that can kind of bring a whole team down. So, you know, that's a really important kind of aspect. I think I read recently somewhere in something like Bloomberg or Reuters, one of those sort of articles, that it was like one toxic employee is 10 times as negative as a positive employee will be positive. So, and that's really dangerous when you think of it like that. So yeah, it's important to identify anyone who might not be as positive quickly, and hopefully help them get positive. But, you know, if, you know, it's not, you can't always go down that route, and sometimes you have to, you know, manage and kind of take it forward that route. So yeah, 100%.
Sorry, Haydn, I've talked over you there, but I think, yeah, as you say, actually, other staff do look, don't they, to see how you handle those situations. And again, that's part of, I think, what helps people to see that they have value, because you don't just ignore them, you do deal with them. And a bit like you said already, you know, if you're having those conversations at an informal stage early on, hopefully people will recognise what they're doing that's not kind of fitting in with the company culture, and they'll, with some support and discussions, they can turn that around. So yeah, again, people will be looking to see how you handle those situations. So yeah, brilliant. Sorry, I interrupted you there. Was there something else you're going to say on that?
No, I mean, I've got an interesting example though, where recently we've unfortunately had someone that had to leave, and another employee kind of in another site wasn't aware they'd left. They rang them to ask for help with something, and they said, "Oh, no, unfortunately, you know, I'm no longer with Kinnan. But then the first thing they said to them after that was, you know, I was dealt with in the most fair way, and actually I brought it upon myself. So I think that's really valuable then with this other employee that's kind of like spoken to them, because people carry on speaking when they leave, you know, they make friendships and relationships in work. But that when they do leave, you know, they're saying the right things, and you never really want to leave, have exited employees leaving on bad terms, because, you know, that's not good for anyone, whether it's the business, whether it's the employee, whether it's the current existing team. You know, it's all really the systems that sometimes feel as though they're there to get in the way and cause frustration. They're actually there to create fair and like kind of systems that help you provide a better kind of working experience for everyone in the team, not just that person who isn't necessarily performing so well. So yeah. I think that's really important to remember, just following those right kind of systems and beliefs that you set out in your like handbooks and whatnot.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a brilliant example, Haydn. Yeah, because actually sometimes, what, as you said, what you might do, if you were to follow a formal process to the letter, you could end up sometimes quite people feeling that they've been treated unfairly, but actually by dealing with things in a fair way and just being open and transparent as part of the process and having discussions, hopefully if people do need to exit the company, they still do it in a way that they don't necessarily leave with bad feeling. It is a really hard thing to achieve, and it sounds like, yeah, you've done that really well, so well done for that, because it can be really difficult to when those relationships have to come to an end.
Yeah, 100%.
I think one of the things that you were talking about, as you say, and I've put here kind of like undertaking staff surveys. I think that's actually potentially quite grand for what you really need to do in lots of businesses, particularly smaller ones. It doesn't need to be a long set of questions. It might just be just having a discussion to just kind of get a really good feel for what really attracted people to come and work for you. What's one of the main things that they really enjoy about working for the company. So you can be clear that, what we think are our main benefits or our main things, that reasons for retention are those main reasons. And also sometimes just to ask, what's not working quite so well, or if you could change one thing about the company, what would it be? So you can get a really good feel for, okay, if this is coming out as a common theme, is there something creative we could do? Even if it is something that's potentially quite rigid, is there something creative we could do just to make that have slightly less of an impact or be slightly negative? And then some of those insights will really give you great information when you're advertising other roles. And again, also thinking about where you might invest next when you're looking at retention. And again, helping you to get a good feel for what you are getting right. And when you make changes, making sure that you're feeding those back as well. So you can go, we've had this feedback, this is what we've done about it, and great. People feel listened to, because that's so much, so important. And I've said, when you're looking at kind of engagement and kind of other bespoke solutions you might come up with, I think the more that you talk to the staff, the more you're going to understand what motivates one person isn't necessarily going to motivate another. So you really need to think about how you can tailor things to each individual's needs. It might be overtime, like I said, for some to save money, for others it might be more having time off. We've already heard again about the increase in terms of healthcare, very positive. For others it might be the opportunity to develop and to have promotion. The money might not be so important as the future value in themselves and investment in themselves. So kind of working out what each person needs, working with them to achieve it. You're going to have much more likely to have a team approach then to things. And again, people are going to feel much more likely to retain, to stay with the company if they feel that real part of the team. And again, it doesn't always need to be about bigger long-term goals, motivation. It's just sometimes about showing gratitude, just verbally or through small rewards, such as, we're a bit quiet, you can get off early, half an hour earlier, or even just buying somebody an ice cream in the hot weather, or like you've just said, Haydn, demonstrating that you're quite happy to pitch in and do what's needed when it's needed, to help in and be one of the team. That can be really motivating, just something so simple. It really, those sorts of things are really important. And thinking about how you empower your staff. So can they make decisions in their roles, or they always have to get approval from above? By giving people a bit more freedom to act sometimes, they're going to feel more valued. And again, they're much more likely to be loyal to you. And I think, again, that kind of trust between them and you as a company is much more likely to be stronger as well. And we've already hit on well-being. We've seen this a lot. I saw it a lot pre-COVID, definitely increasing, particularly in certain age ranges, I would say, kind of people in their late 20s. I would say a lot more people struggling with anxiety, struggling a bit more with social interactions. I know we often thought about it as being linked to social media, but I think whatever the kind of background is, actually what we tend to see is that COVID has exacerbated some of that. So there's really very much more an increase. We've seen it in the media. People have been encouraged to talk about their well-being in all sorts of settings, and workplace is one of those. In the appropriate kind of place, not necessarily in front of customers, I might say, but certainly if you as a business are kind of promoting healthy approach to well-being, demonstrating healthy habits, including, good work-life balance, healthy eating, exercise, taking breaks, a bit like some of the stuff you've been talking about already, Haydn. Then also at the other end of the spectrum, maybe encourage them to talk about any stress or worries they might have. You can have, I know it isn't always easy sometimes to build in like one-to-one time or management time, particularly thinking about, your setting, Haydn, but where you can encourage those discussions, people to talk about stresses or worries, so that you can then do something about it. That supportive work environment means that people are much more likely to stay. And we've talked about, you've already said, around looking at inclusion, haven't you, Haydn? You're talking about your diversity and inclusion, so that people know as a business, this is how we embrace uniqueness. This is how we engage with different perspectives. This is how we're looking to embrace people's different experiences and you as an individual. And I think that kind of hiring a diverse workforce is only part of the picture. Exactly as you've said, Haydn, the key is about making sure everyone feels included. And in order to do that, the company owners, leaders, other people that are well respected within the business need to be showing authentically that they value the people behind those ideas and experiences. And again, from what you're talking about, that's clearly something that you're doing really well already. And so just a kind of one final point from me is just looking at turnover. So again, exit interviews. So say staff turnover is a good thing. It is good to bring in fresh ideas, new talent, sometimes to change team dynamics. That can all be really healthy. So don't think for one second that I'm saying retain absolutely everybody as the priority. But make sure that actually when people do leave, take the opportunity to learn from those that are leaving. It isn't always you want to hear that negative feedback, but actually it is really good, particularly if there are common themes. So we've talked about, engaging with people and talking to them while they work for you, but also take that opportunity definitely to do exit interviews with people and see if there's something going on that maybe might be leading to a higher turnover than you might like. I don't know, Haydn, is that something you do as a company? Do you do exit interviews at all?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it very much, there's some reasons we don't. I think sometimes if like someone's gone through university and they're leaving more because of a progression in like kind of life and things like that, we don't necessarily put as much time on it. I guess it's more informal in that regard. So it more be between the manager and them, just kind of maybe as they're leaving, they kind of get a good understanding what could we have done better. But for sure, when like full-time people leave, or when it's someone leaving on to go to a new industry, or there's not as clear cut and obvious as to why they're doing it, we do try and get as much kind of information out of them as possible as to why, what we could have done better. We've been very lucky in the sense that I don't remember the last time we lost someone to another hospitality provider. But even when we lose people to like we recently had this guy that finished uni actually and he was one of our best team members. He went into a tech sales role. And I had a chat with him about what we could do better. And he, he said a few of the things that we've been working on around transparency and kind of giving people a better opportunity to kind of develop their own roles. So I know you mentioned that earlier, and I think it's something that I want to touch on again, especially in the context of small businesses. So sometimes it might be, for example, we for example don't have like a set marketing full-time job person at the moment. But likewise, if someone comes to you and they're like, I want to get involved with this, explain to them why we don't have it, be open, be honest, say, we don't have a budget for that at the moment. But then give them the opportunity to justify and create that role. So, if they can, sometimes people will come up with a way of even budgeting it in for you. And if you put things back on the team members, even if it's not necessarily roles, but sometimes, products or problems in the business, often they have lots of solutions as well. And I think people then get a lot of satisfaction out of kind of coming up with those solutions. And I think there's a tendency, especially for small businesses, to be very secretive about the, finances or, opportunities or these sort of things. But I think sometimes, especially with the right people, you got to make sure that's the case as well. But to share those things, they often will be part of the solution as well then. But also they'll understand why perhaps they haven't been given that opportunity. If it's not to do with their performance, it's not to do with their, anything they're doing wrong. It's more, something that just the company's not ready for that yet. So I think that's quite an important thing as well. Because people don't always have a really good understanding of limitations to business.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're right. I'm always kind of advocating for this, that so that as open and transparent as you can possibly be as a business. And sometimes I understand why people there's certain things people don't want to share commercially, but generally I just think as much as you can share the better. Help people to understand, as you say, what the business stands for, the reasons why things, and to be able to just openly have some of that dialogue and ask questions, encourage it, because you'll understand your staff, you'll understand your business from another perspective so much better, won't you? So yeah, all kudos to you for doing that, because it really, really does make a difference. So obviously we've talked through a few different bits already, but I just wanted to see if there's anything else, Haydn, that you wanted to, so, talk about business. I know, if you want to tell people a little bit about the business and maybe some challenges that you faced and why you've taken the approach you have to retention.
Yeah. So I think in terms of kind of our core kind of, because it is something that we've concentrated on, especially coming out of COVID. I think it's been really well publicized, the kind of barriers that hospitality has in terms of retaining team members, but also recruiting new ones. So we kind of did spend a lot of time looking into it and looking at how we can be better, and definitely kind of looked down kind of a very similar line to what you've been through already. With probably a big focus for us on the kind of values side of it. We even went as far in kind of when interviewing people, making it so value centric that we would kind of have group tasks where they'd be given access to our website and our newspaper, which has basically all our values and kind of brand principles and things like that in, and asked to pitch a marketing report, like a marketing pitch on a new Kinmilk site. So by the end of it, they were all kind of talking about our values, and then before they start, they kind of have a good understanding of where they're going, because that's really important, because you don't want people to start with you if they're not going to continue. But also it meant that even if they weren't successful, they often became regular customers. So I think just being as open and also to be don't be afraid to be almost controversial with your values. Controversial meaning in a positive way generally. And not be afraid to be slightly political. I think sometimes it can be very value added. Is I guess what I mean in that sense. Not controversial in a negative way, but to have an opinion, I think, is okay in business, and I think a lot of them, you'll keep employees for longer because hopefully they share your opinion and then they agree with what you stand for. I think sometimes it's seen as often big corporate companies kind of toe a line the same as every single other branding company. So it's okay to kind of find your own way, be a bit more vocal about it, and then you kind of get even stronger value alignment with your teams. So I think that's something that we focus on, and kind of the narrative that gets presented through managers, through what we do on site, through living it every day, through making sure that people are recycling. I know it sounds small, but we talk about being a sustainable business. When people are in a rush, they're chucking everything in every bin. But for us to concentrate on making sure people are putting things in the right bin, although it's very small, it's really, again, going back to that value element, and the teams really appreciate that we try our best to make sure that things are being done properly, and it's not just something that it says on the letterhead. It is something that we live and breathe. But in terms of general kind of retainment, it's very much following the similar sort of lines that we've gone over already. So pushing that transparency, pushing that engagement, and everyone in every side of the business as well. So another example I'll give is when we develop a menu, we invite everyone along, even if you've been with us for a day. But you can just come along, try the food, or you can come along and pitch your fantastic brunch dish, and we all vote together and give feedback together through kind of just like a Google Docs. But it makes everyone kind of, when we then release those products, everyone gets behind them because they were part of the development process of that. So again, that brings in that kind of everyone's welcome, we're very transparent, value driven, retainment. So it's very much about people kind of living and breathing the brand, the values of the brand, but also the products that we do give and kind of offer as well. And then probably the last thing that I think that we've been focused on a little more recently is training. So there's a lot of access to free training, I think, which people don't often realize as well. So, you know, it's not something you have to throw loads of money at. And likewise, there are lots of employees that are happy to do it sometimes in their own time, which I know, you know, for an employer like us, where, you know, time is literally money, because we operate on a rotated basis to cover making coffee and things. You know, if you give someone the opportunity to go to Bristol and see a roaster and go to the roastery and work with Clifton Coffee on some little bits, you know, they love that. That's an amazing experience for them. And likewise, you know, if you send them to the bakery with Alex Gooch and they just see some like new processes, that's another amazing experience. So I think, you know, kind of working with your suppliers and to kind of offer these kind of, I guess, more information and a better look and a better, more transparent look at what you do is another thing that can kind of make people feel included, and also understand kind of where everything comes from and how it all comes together. So yeah, I think for sure, you know, retention is the way forward. Recruitment, I think it becomes harder and harder. We're seeing it now that the kind of the long-term hospitality kind of careerists are disappearing. So, you know, it's all about how you can keep the really great ones, but then how you work with those people to train the new guys coming through as well. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, value-driven and transparency is kind of our big goals in Kin and Ilk.
Wow, Haydn, honestly, there's so much there. That's just fantastic. I can so see why you're so successful. It just having that inclusive, as you say, transparent, no, God, my brain now, transparent, you know, yeah, value-driven approach, just so important. And I love the idea of, I might just come and work for you just to come and test out all the new foods, because that would definitely, I can see how things like that, again, it's those things that you're not going to get somewhere else, isn't it, necessarily, being part of developing the menu and all of that. I can just see how your approach is so successful. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to ask if anybody's got any questions. I know we are actually just on time, so we'll just give a couple of minutes just in case anybody has got any questions. And what I might just do then is quickly move to the signposting. I'll move to that quickly while I see if anyone's got any questions. I can't see any questions coming in. Okay, so what we've got here is, I know you were talking about other free training, but one I was mentioning around maybe Jobs Growth Wales, apprenticeships, React. There's a couple of links here where you can look at bringing in younger people into the business potentially and growing, you know, part-funded training in order to grow the business in that way. So again, that can be a great retention tool, because it's a really good way of getting people more loyal potentially to your business, because you're investing in them really early, and also an opportunity for you to grow as a business. And there's just a few little tips here, just a few things that I've picked up, articles that I think you might find quite useful if people want to look at some other retention strategies. I'm sure that Haydn and I have probably covered most of the ones that are there, but again, there's some really good little creative ones in there, which are quite nice. I always generally put the link to Mind Cymru, just because generally, as say, workplace wellbeing comes up so often these days as being something we really need to remember to invest in. So I've put that link on there. So we haven't got any questions coming up. I will just mention briefly before I let you all go that we have got one more event in the Lunch and Learn series that we have on tomorrow, and actually it is learning more about the employer support schemes, Jobs Growth Wales, apprenticeships and React in particular. I've got a couple of people coming tomorrow to talk from Welsh Government and from Careers Wales, just to talk about those schemes. So if they are ones you want to know more about, then there's a link there, but also go on Eventbrite and you can sign up to that tomorrow, slightly later time of 12:15 to 1:15. Also, my email address is there just in case there's any questions that come up as a result of this session. So thank you again, Haydn, very much. Really interested, really enjoyed hearing from you today. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining in the session, this Lunch and Learn session with us.
Thanks, Lesley. Thanks, Haydn. Thanks, Riska, for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Riska.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.